Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nation Leadership Forum. As always, this platform is dedicated to disseminating public interest affairs. And tonight we want to talk about matters digitized payments and the micro, small and medium-sized enterprise segment of this economy, which is the engine of the Kenya and many frontier market economies. We will be discussing this subject at length, whether it is cost, accessibility, and what this means by and large for this category of businesses. Remember, the World MSME Day is marked in June every year. And this year, the theme, let me read for you, was building resilience amidst multiple crises. Building resilience amidst multiple crises. To unpack this subject with me on studio, we have an eminent panel, starting with Sharia Ali, Vice President, Country Manager, East Africa for MasterCard. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Gituku Kirika, Chief Executive Officer at IPS Pesalink. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Harrison Ngatia, Chief SME and Enterprise Development Officer at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for creating time to be with us this evening for the conversation around the World MSME Day, specifically focusing on digitized payments. Let me start with Sharia to my left here. Listening to the theme for this year, World MSME Day, building resilience amidst multiple crises. What does it mean for you?
Well, let's just start by appreciating the fact that SMEs are the backbone of most economies in the world. 60 or 70% of your GDP is actually sitting on MSMEs. Now, when you look at volatility comes in waves. We've seen COVID, we've seen the wars come through, we've seen MPOX now knocking on our door. It's quite a handful. Yeah. But what builds resilience is actually belief in the fact that if you have the agility in your SME model or MSME model where you can use digital tools to diversify, but at the same time enable your business to run smoothly during crises, that will just build your strength. Yes. So, for example, in the case of MasterCard, as soon as COVID came, we were looking at simplified solutions. It's called a solution where you could actually set up your website, put up your inventory up there. You can't have people coming to your kiosk or anything like that. You could still sell it and deliver it in a safe and responsible manner. So that's just one example. There are multiple other ways in which you have to build your resilience. And your dependency on cash, we believe, is one of the biggest, because some of these viruses, for example, even go through the notes, right? Yes. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful of the SMEs model and then provide solutions which are low cost. Yes, there's an issue around formalization of MSMEs as well. So the digitization sometimes comes with that fear. Yeah. We have to break through that fear. We have to show that the flip side, any economy, at least 2 to 3% of their GDP is the cost of cash for that economy. So if a $100 billion economy has 2 to 3% cost of cash, well, that cost of cash, it doesn't get realized by the average MSME out there, right? Because you're like, oh, okay, I go to the ATM, I get my cash, or I go to the bank branch, I get my cash. Well, you have to get that cash, the travel, the storage, this fraud element around or theft, all of those things have to be taken into account. So what we recommend is that in case of, obviously, when there's volatility there should be options at hand. You can choose whichever option you want to go to. If you want to stick with cash, fine. Mobile money, stick with that. If you want to move to accounts, you should have the options. Having the options is critical, and having the agility to move quickly and swiftly towards adopting those is what we want to bring to the market.
And we'll be touching on the issue you've raised around digitization of payments and the fears around formalization. But let me get the introductory thoughts from Gituku with us. This theme for this year, building resilience amidst multiple crises, what does it speak to you?
Well, just adding on to a little bit what Sharia just talked about, it's think about resilience in this for SMEs, and it'll be about the ability to be able to adapt to what's happening within the environment, ability to take on new technologies, new ways of running their businesses, right? And also what's happening also in the ecosystem around them. What are the enabling factors that are there from a regulatory perspective, from the different participants in the, say, for example, in the payments ecosystem, powering their continued ability to carry on running their businesses, right? And to continue to grow as well. For us, we closely are looking at what's happening within our space on the business side, we power about today 45% of our traffic is actually coming from businesses, Unfortunately, we are seeing growth in that. Last year our volumes, for example, went up 60% in the Pesalink ecosystem. Those are good indicators that despite the challenges that economies have faced, that MSMEs have faced, that when you look at some indicators around volumes that we do see, and also when you look, break it down to specific use cases, or rather the payment types that we are seeing, there's positive indicators. And so resilience, all about ensuring that we can be able to adapt to the new environments that we face, and that participants in the payments ecosystem, for example, are there to be able to provide different solutions for different entities.
Okay. Harrison, you sit in an entity which has an umbrella housing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of MSMEs. What does this thing mean for you?
So in terms of the MSMEs, if you look at what they are contributing to the GDP, in Kenya, it's around between that and 40%. So you look at that's big. In terms of employment, 85%. Yeah. It's big. If you look at the number now, over 90% of the businesses in Kenya are MSMEs. So that's big, and therefore we need to ensure that we are supporting them to ensure that they can be adaptable, especially to the different shocks that are available any day. If you look at the current situation we have, like high interest rates, we have high exchange rates. We had recently floods, COVID. So there are different shocks that are affecting businesses. So how do we support them to be able to be more efficient, to be more innovative, so that they can be able to ensure that their businesses are more resilient as they continue supporting the economy.
Okay. So building resilience through providing an ecosystem infrastructure which basically supports. Sherry, let me now come more specifically to you. When you look at the sequencing of shocks we have had, whether it's COVID-19, spillovers from Russia, Ukraine, and looking at the Kenyan landscape, East Africa as well, would you say MSMEs have proven resilient? And what was the place of digitized payments in that?
Yeah, I think MSMEs definitely proven resilient. We saw 45% growth when we looked at our e-commerce increase during COVID period. And it was understandable. The physical contact was just not there, right? So you had to use alternative payment methods. And, the beauty about MasterCard and the way we operate is that we bring out those digital solutions, whether it's using our payment gateway, which is the highly secure, amazing uptime, one of the best in the world. It enables you to have a sustainable and trustworthy mode of doing commerce. Now, what does that do for an MSME? As soon as they adopt it, data points start getting generated in a formal way, which then can be better accepted by financial institutions to lend to them, help them grow their business, reinvest. Yes, I understand the concern around taxation, and I know it's a big concern, but nevertheless, if you have, let's say, a $5,000 turnover business, and with digitization and data and lending and access to global marketplaces, access to supply chains, you can actually do your business efficiently and scale it, then digital is the way that you should go. And I believe that the MSMEs are very smart. They know their business inside out, and they will not be coerced by anything. And we believe that hand-holding MSMEs, understanding their model, appreciating it, showing them the future growth trajectory that they could avail, is far better than coming with a stick and saying, formalize yourself, we need you to pay up. Won't work.
Okay. Gituku, you have visibility of the payment space in ways majority of us don't. In the wake of these shocks we're now talking about, what have you seen in the payment space?
So for context first, Pesalink, which is the brand that is known out there. Is owned by the Integrated Payment Services, a company that was established by the Kenya Bankers Association back in 2017. And the reason why the bankers came together to do this was just to modernize how monies are moved around the country. This is something that, that's happened in other jurisdictions as well, right across the world. Consumers are discerning of more efficient and faster ways to move money around, and that's why IPSL as a company was established, and Pesalink was born in 2017. And it's been a long journey since then. We move funds. It's primarily between bank accounts, but today we have over 65 participants on the Pesalink ecosystem. And we'll soon, very soon, we'll have more non-banks than banks within the Pesalink ecosystem. Right? So we have all the banks on the Pesalink ecosystem, just one that's pending. We have SACCOs, we have Fintechs, we have a telco as well. Tcash by Telkom Kenya is also part of the Pesalink ecosystem, and we are open to having more on board as well. Right? Looking at what we see, right, and let me go back to when you talk about COVID, we'll go back to 2020. In 2020, volumes on the Pesalink ecosystem went up 70%. Yeah, and that's actually the highest we've ever seen. If you look again globally, presently, the other markets where we look at very closely in terms of similarities to what we are doing here as Pesalink is markets like India, Brazil, Nigeria. And in all of those markets, the growth rate in the last 3 years, right, has been anywhere between 45% to 55% for Brazil, compounded over the last 3 years, and that's enormous growth, right? If you look in Kenya, where instant payments is primarily mobile money in this country, we've seen a 30% increment thereabout for on the payment side, on person-to-merchant payments in the mobile money space. Our volumes went up 60%, like I mentioned earlier on last year. And so this all points to globally, right, the continued growth of payments both in the P2P space, person-to-person transfers and person-to-merchant payments is headed in the right direction. We're seeing the same thing here in this country. And so we are quite very optimistic about the continued digitization of payments within the business space. Like Shri has also mentioned, there's always the urge for cash, use of cash. Cash is still very efficient way of paying. And any digitization, it needs to, first of all, be as efficient as cash.
Yes. Right?
And also, the flow should be the same. Don't try and change the flow of money if you want to digitize something, otherwise you're going to get pushback, right? It's got to be as efficient as cash in terms of, if there's, for example, even a dispute. If you are making a payment and you overpay, right, you resolve it there and then. Yes. With the person who you're paying. Right? They give you back, if they're meant to give you back 500 shillings, they give you back 100, right? You can resolve it there and then. Digital payments needs to be that simple as well when things go wrong, right? And you've got to remove friction within digital payments for adoption to take place and for people to feel comfortable with digital payments. Okay. Yeah.
And I'll be coming back to this issue of the fears around it in the second leg of this conversation, but let me come to Harrison. Many MSMEs that we speak to here as a media house tell us that when it comes to discussions around policy and policy around digitized payments, they feel their voice is largely muted, almost non-existent. What are you guys doing about it as the umbrella body?
Okay, one of the things that we are doing is in 2019, before COVID, we commenced a study that's called SME Policy Index, just to establish what SMEs, especially the micro, feel about the policy ecosystem. So that helps to understand the gaps, but also implementation, because one of the key things that we have noted, there are so many policies that are available, but they are not implemented. So we are able now to identify areas that we work with different players like government and other players that are in the ecosystem to ensure that the policy issues that are affecting the businesses have been able to be addressed, though the journey for policy making is long, yeah, because it has different players. But how do we ensure that we are able to ensure that process is more efficient and is supporting businesses? There are different things that we are also seeing. Most of the businesses, especially the smaller they are not interested in the policy discussions. But how we are working around it as we implement different initiatives, if it's like financing, ensuring that we are able to pick the operational and the policy issues as we support them. So that becomes easier. But when you just ask them to come for a policy discussion, most of them will not. So we are able, but in terms of programming, we are able now to identify through that process.
Sheria, how do we amplify the voice of MSMEs in this policy around digitized payments? Something like the national policy, national payment strategy that I saw being launched 2 or 3 years ago. How do we amplify their voice there?
I think it's basically firstly to appreciate the MSMEs and the various, I guess, segments, if you can segment the MSMEs, because not all MSMEs are the same. Yeah. So when you're talking to a kiosk down the road versus when you're talking to let's say one of the higher turnover MSMEs or SMEs, the nuances and the challenges are very different. So firstly, it is not a one stroke for all. Secondly, I think I like what Harrison mentioned around understanding of the environment, the incentives, the government support systems, the regulations. That is not something that comes naturally to an MSME. You have to actually handhold and make them part of it. So let it be more educational. Yes, their voice has to be heard, but it has to be an awareness session where you have to understand their models, talk exactly specified to that model, how that model can actually grow and flourish. Yeah, that is critical because that will get the MSME interested. Now I'm interested in your policy because you can show me how I can grow my business 3-4 times over, right? So I think that sweet spot has to be hit every time, and it's not easy. Let's be fair. I mean, it is not easy, and KEPSA is doing a great job in trying to build that. But I think all public, private sector players need to collaborate. FIs need to come to the table, understand the requirements clearly, and then have a dialogue where we show them, yes, by digitizing your business, you will actually have efficiencies in terms of your operating cost. You will have a chance to have access to global marketplaces. You can have better access at a lower cost to your supply chain. Yes. And best of it is if the data points lead to access to uncollateralized credit. Because collateralized credit everybody is willing to give. And that's not what an MSME needs. MSME needs a partner. And to get a partner, you need to come up with, hey, I've got the data, I can data model it for you. You're good for so much. And if you do well, we'll continue to support you. And that's what really MSMEs need. Now, if we create that environment, and everybody has to play their role, then there is no reason why an MSME will not come up and share their voice openly and want to partner with you.
You mentioned the need for frictionless, if I could say, engagements when it comes to digitized payments. How do we give MSMEs amplified voices?
So I think we've got to look at and seek to understand exactly, what are their pain points, right? What are they really struggling with? Yeah. And friction comes in many ways. Right? Friction comes in costs. Friction comes in the time, in terms of when I can use something, be able to do something. Friction comes in terms of how something is presented to me and the journeys that I'm going through as well. And the things that you've got to then think about in terms of what really are the needs and concerns and fears of the MSME sector. Today, for example, as just been mentioned here, there is concerns around what does digitization mean for me from a tax perspective, right? And I was talking to Harrison earlier on, he was saying the challenges that you face with MSMEs is that they won't come to the table to discuss policy. However, if it was something that is going to show them how they're going to make more money, then we can have that conversation. And so being able to remove the friction and concerns around digital payments, be it what I've just mentioned about costs, be it accessibility, right? And also the manner in which things are presented to me and how I go through the journeys to be able to make digital payments are some of the things that we need to look at, and also then figure out what really are the pain points of a particular entity, and am I really solving for them, right? or am I just seeking to just get digital payments or solutions out there for the sake of doing it?
Okay, right. And that point by Gituku will take us to a very quick break. We have been just doing the introductory thoughts around our conversation on digitized payments and the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise segment. When we come back, we shall be delving, and I can see a couple of questions coming in around this subject of digitized payments, formalization, and especially whether the people I have on set really speak to the micro level of this segment of enterprises. I assure you they do. But when we come back, we shall be addressing a lot more on that, so stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome back to this conversation on the Nation Leadership Forum. Digitized payments and micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In our first leg of the conversation, we're basically doing introductory thoughts around the shock environment we have been living in and what it has meant for MSMEs, especially from an uptake of digitized payment solutions. But online, I am seeing a lot of questions, and they drill down basically to two. Someone is telling me, let's get to the elephant in the room. Sharia Ali, the question of cost is overwhelmingly being asked here, that we will not take up this digitized payment solutions until we address the cost question. What's your response, Sharia?
Well, my friends, let me tell you that there are 1.5 million farmers in East Africa today. Okay, and you know the spreads and yields on farming produce and the sales. Those 1.5 million farmers today enjoy Community Pass from MasterCard, which is an amazing app-based and a feature phone-based solution whereby you can have access to marketplace, you can have access to supply chain, so you get your seeds and inputs and everything, build data on the back of that, and get credit on the back of it. So cost is definitely a concern, but what I'm trying to create relevance here is that when you go into the micro, there is still relevance for digital. Now let me share around the cost. The cost has to be looked at in relativity, right? You look at cash, like I mentioned, 2 to 3% of the GDP of a country. Costs of cash, managing cash, storing, production, securities, all of that, transportation. Now, forget that, because maybe that's hard for the average person to comprehend, that how does that impact them directly. Now you come to, okay, a cost of a transaction where a digital platform is used has to be minimized. Is that a call to action for all public-private sectors to work collectively on? 100% yes. We, as MasterCard, took a decision last year in August. We said that our current pricing structure has to be tweaked. We took a 60% cut on the merchant cost. So a merchant who accepts our card, we said, okay, the interchange has to drop from 1.16% to 0.5% for the conventional modes of acceptance. Tap on phone, we dropped it to 0.25%. QR, we went to 0. Now, this is a bold test.
Yeah.
Globally, this has not been done. We did it in Kenya first. And the goal was that the average merchant or person who wants to accept a digital form of payment would give it a chance now with the cost being reduced.
Yeah.
So is it a valid concern? 100% it is. Are we, as responsible stakeholders in the ecosystem, responsible to bring those solutions out at the right price point and equity? Of course. Of course, there is, in scale, there lies revenues as well, right? So once a solution, even at low price or low cost point, once it spreads and it really solves for the needs of that ecosystem, then the business flourishes for us and for the merchants who are using it, right? So we've got QR Pay by Link, we've got Tap on Phone, and we're coming up with other smart ways of accepting payments. And it's going to be a continuous journey of doing bold things, learning, and progressing from there.
Maybe the quick follow-on question there, Sharia, is how do we do this at scale? It's good for MasterCard to do it, but how do we ensure that actions of MasterCard then crowd in other players in this ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of investment that's also involved here. President Ruto was in Washington, D.C. A few months ago. We signed Made Alliance for Africa there. The idea was to bring African Development Bank, MasterCard, Microsoft, Equity Group in Kenya all together. There's $200 million on the table. Some portion of it is grants, some portion of it is structured loans. Yeah. That is meant to actually pass down free digital form factors to farmers in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda as a pilot, and then we spread out to Nigeria and a few other countries. In fact, Nigeria is also in the pilot. So what it does is that it gives you the starting impetus. right? So I've got the funding, I've got a free form factor, I can have a card now, or an app, or a feature phone solution, whereby I can access again my inputs, get access to marketplace, etc. So this got signed in May, and currently projects are on their way, and we believe that just because $12 million of that is going straight to the farmer in the form of a digital form factor for free, no cost.
Yeah.
Through whom? Through the partner banks.
Yes.
Yeah. So what that does is then that enables a test and learn. They'll test it, they'll see the benefits of it, they'll see how it unlocks, not only makes their business and life simple, but also unlocks credit for them in the medium to long term. That's how you have a mass scale impact. Public, private sector collaboration is critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gituku, do you see this cost concern being raised as a valid one and as pronounced as it is being made here? And how do we do these solutions at scale?
Absolutely. I think this is something that we need to address. I think there's definitely room to bring down costs, and I think we should be looking to challenging ourselves on how we bring down the cost of payments. And before I talk about the Kenyan landscape, if you look into other markets, again, I'll speak to markets where instant payments is really, really thriving and they're making headlines. They believe in a number of those markets, like Brazil and India, for example, that individuals should not pay anything to move money around. Businesses should pay, but pay a small amount. In Nigeria, it costs us maximum 4 shillings to send money from one account to another account, right? If you convert that from the naira. So yeah, should we be asking and having a conversation about bringing the costs of instant payments down, or the cost of digital payments down? Yes, my answer is yes to that. How do we do that? One of the reasons why you may have cost of payments being high is probably because of having multiple ecosystems, right? What we speak about closed and open loop ecosystems, right? So closed is where you've got to be have a store value as the one sending in that particular ecosystem, and you've got to be the one also receiving it, and you're both in the same in the same platform. And that kind of situation, when you've got multiple, say, closed loop ecosystems, brings in inefficiency, right, in payments, right? It doesn't create an environment where there's sufficient competition to be able to transact. And so we do need to ask ourselves a question of how do we create a more open payments ecosystem, right? What's the role for private sector? What's the role for the regulator? Right, this country, we're glad that the regulator went out with a national payments and vision strategy 2 years ago. Right, well, the next thing that we really need to ask ourselves, how is that coming to fruition? Yeah. Right, and what steps need to be taken again by private sector and by regulator to bring that into fruition? In markets, there are markets where we have the regulator, part and parcel of say a national switch, for example, right? Or you have got policies in place that, even in the absence of a national switch, you've got policies in place that encourage open ecosystems, right? And when you do that, you will then be able to certainly bring the cost of payments down. If you look at this country, go back several years when we had closed-loop ATMs, where you could only use the ATM of your own bank when they give you the card, right? When that was opened up, the costs have come down and continue to come down. Right? So it is a concern for us, and as IPSL, right, what we seek to do is precisely that. We are on a mission to simplify life, right, and through affordable, instant digital payments for everyone, everywhere, right, every time. And by so doing, by having open ecosystems, right, by having everyone be able to move funds from one place to another without having to have several hops, we will begin to see cost of payments coming down. So yes, it is a conversation that we need to have about how we bring the cost of payments down in this part of the world.
Gituku, there are many in our audience who might not know that there was a time ATMs were not interoperable, for lack of a better word. So
yes,
how times change.
Yes.
Harrison, someone is asking here, does KEPSA really represent the micro businesses? They feel compelled you represent the small and medium, but speak about the micro.
Yes, we represent business across the whole spectrum, from micro to small to medium corporates, and representation can be you can be either a direct member or we also have business decision members that are representing the different segments, and also we implement programs that are supporting even with the micro. Currently, we have funding programs for the micro, training programs for the micro, access to markets programs for the micro, and we are looking even at how do we ensure that they get access to affordable and affordable credit, and we have programs that have less than 10% interest per annum, and working with the different partners, and also looking at how do we ensure that the micros are also able to access markets, especially in the variations of the larger companies. So we are creating those programs that are helping and supporting the businesses to ensure that they are able to access. So we represent
the micros.
Yes.
Very good response there, Sharia. You have touched on this issue, but I can see a number of questions here around it, and that is the merits and challenges that MSMEs face when they go on the digitized payments vis-a-vis the demands of formalization and what that means from a broader regulatory standpoint. Maybe the way to answer this, Sharia, is to tell us, in the long haul, how does the, for the lack of a better word, merit-demerit look like here?
So look, if all you have to do is put yourself into the shoes of a micro SME or an SME, right? And you look at what your business has been doing, what kind of turnover is it having, what are the operational challenges, what are the inefficiencies, and then you think about, okay, if I don't formalize myself, that means I'm not visible. Yeah. Firstly, you're not visible, right? You are just limited to the small area that is around you or your network that you're connected to on a personal level. Now, if you really want to break through that and grow your business in leaps and bounds, you need to say, okay, for example, we've launched with the KCB Simplify, where you can actually set up your storefront, right? Upload it, sell through it, whatever. We have, for example, with Diamond Trust Bank, Fintech Factory, where finance as a service or payments as a service can be just loaded on your, if you're a small SME, we can provide you that solution. QR is another low-cost acceptance solution that can be provided to you. And the list is quite extensive. I mean, we've just launched the I&M Bank SME card, the first SME MasterCard in Kenya. Now, what are the benefits of that? So, for example, you can go to, let's say, Meta Partners. So there's a website for MasterCard Easy Savings platform. Yeah. You can go there. You get $1,400 credit for using Meta Partners, $2,000 for using Shopify, monthly discount subscription on Google Workspace if you want to digitize your SME business, and DocuSign also gives you a discount where 50% off, so that the contractual part is also taken care of electronically. Yeah. Now, is that their complexity, and do you have to take that complexity and embrace it and adopt digital? It is to be intentional. It cannot be by the way. Yeah. Right? So, to me, when looking at an SME and their aspirations to grow, it is extremely important that we don't throw everything but the kitchen sink at that, but rather cherry pick. Okay, for your business model to grow, getting access to marketplace. We've got, for example, cross-border services. It has got a 40% lower cost point than an average money transfer that you do abroad. Yeah. Okay, through a bank account. So with that solution, instant. Right, 200 countries, instant. Whether you're a wallet holder or a card holder or a account holder, does not matter, right? So if those different solutions can be, you can plot it and say, okay, well, this enables me to grow my business. This gets me access to a better marketplace, and then the data that's going to be collecting on the back of this is going to get me some credit line. So you have to think big in order to see the merits or demerits of you going the formal route and digitizing your business. Now, if you're happy with life and you feel this is it, I have hit the pinnacle, I don't need anything, that's up to you. But the choice is always there, and you have to have ambition.
Gituku, Pretty much on the same question, yes.
So first of all, let me say that as Pesalink, right? We today, like I mentioned earlier on, we have got multiple participants on our network, right? Yes, we've got banks, but we have a lot of non-banks as well, which are fintechs. In particular, we also have circles, and we also have a telco, like I mentioned earlier on. Now, with the fintechs, right, they are providing solutions for who? They're providing solutions for the last mile, right? They're providing solutions for MSMEs, right? And we're going to continue, seeing that happening, right? We are looking to go to expand our service offering, right? To provide more, a wider product and service offering, where we'll not only serve the traditional account-to-account we do today, we'll go into new use cases, and it's been a while since, and the market has really been, asking us, when is this going to happen, right? Happy to say that it is going to come along, right? And very soon, where we'll be able to provide more use cases, and to support, therefore, what you're going to find is that we'll be able to be a lot more relevant to our fintech community. And today, we allow, and this is a question I keep being asked even as early as this afternoon, can a fintech and a non-bank integrate directly with Pesalink? The answer is yes, right? And by so doing, then fintech will need a bank sponsor, right, to come on board the Pesalink ecosystem, just for purposes of governance of the entire ecosystem. But we do support non-bank entities, we support fintechs, and we're looking forward to having more of them coming on board and being able to then provide services right down the chain to the last mile, and change their lives and begin to bring more value to the really be it an MSME, be it an individual who doesn't have maybe not fully in the banking ecosystem, right? And we're looking forward to making a difference there.
And maybe while I'm with you, how do you respond to those who feel that for an entity whose focus is interbank payments, so to say, do you really have the ground feel of the payment requirements of MSMEs?
Well, the where we play, like I've alluded before, is we are a switch as Pesalink, right? And therefore, what we do is ensure a very efficient, instant movement of funds between different stores of value, right? And we're not consumer facing, right? So we don't go directly to consumers. We don't go directly to merchants, right? And our interaction with consumers, with merchants, will come about with the intermediaries that we have, right? And we don't design things on our own, right? So we work and talk to the participants who are on our network. So I've just mentioned earlier on, we will engage with fintechs. So it is through the participants who are on our network, right? We speak to, right? We speak to banks, we speak to non-banks, to understand what's happening or what the needs are of the eventual consumer or entity that we are seeking to solve for. And also we do ourselves as well, we do have obviously a lot of data coming through our way. We look at and see what are people using our infrastructure for right now, right? That again points to perhaps where opportunities lie that we are not addressing or we could address better.
Okay. Harrison, speaking about this issue of helping MSMEs when it comes to digitized payments, and one of the issues emerging here is, does KEPSA do any hand-holding for this kind of businesses when it comes to this area of need?
Definitely we do, and there are different ways. One of the things that we always do is through our workshops and training, we are able to work with the MSME to support them identifying what are their needs in terms of digital solutions that are available, and how can they select the digital solutions that are suitable for their businesses, because different businesses have different needs. So working with them to be able to identify and be able to to select a solution that is suitable for their business is very important. The other aspect is working with the different partners that are in the space, ensuring that they come and showcase some of the products that they have to the MSMEs, so that we ensure that not only that they are able to know what is in the market, but they are also able to see what kind of solution that can support, especially from an efficiency perspective, cost effectiveness, based on the solutions that are available in the market. The other aspect that we are also initiative that we launched during COVID, because we realized, whereas there were over 400 products that are available in the market, when we went out to ask MSMEs, they were only able to identify less than 10. So there's a very huge information gap. So because of that, in the last 2 years, we have been developing a platform called MSME Financing Gateway. That platform it's supposed to bridge the gap between what is available and also be able to, because an MSME will register in that platform and indicate what are the needs they are looking for. Then the platform will match the products that are available so that they can select whichever works for them. That platform now is live, and we'll be launching. Fortunately, we'll be launching it tomorrow. Okay.
So you're just on time.
Yeah, just on time. So that will reduce a lot of the information gap, because that's one of huge challenge that most of the SMEs are facing, because they don't understand what is there in the market. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sharia, Gituku touched on this issue, and I'd like you to build on it. How are fintechs playing a role in terms of catalyzing uptake of digitized payments, especially, if we could call it, at the bottom of the economic pyramid among the micro, small, and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah. No, I think fintechs are playing a tremendous role. We're seeing so many bright-minded ideas coming through the fintech factories that exist in Kenya. If you think about, for example, I'll talk about a Kenyan fintech called KEPSA. They've looked at a problem, which was having a one-stop shop trade operating platform for a SME or a trader who, let's say, trades with China.
Yeah.
Right. Today, they have to go through all kinds of informal methods. Now, we're working with them very closely to enable that you can see your trade and working capital, you have your suppliers, you have your buyers, all of that in one interface. And then you can actually trigger payments with the technology of cross-border services, whereby the transaction goes instantly to 200 plus countries.
Yes.
Right? Or the corridors of your choosing. So if so this is all the ideation has come from KEPSA, right? And then we have looked at how does this solve for our traders' problems, and we've kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together with MasterCard cross-border services. Equity Group has just recently launched, MasterCard cross-border services. We've got banks in Tanzania and other places also going live with the same. Why? Because it provides for a frictionless and straight-through instant payment at a lower cost point. Yeah. So I think that's one example. Lipa Later, you may have seen the announcement recently that came out. Buy Now Pay Later is something that's already here, and we can always argue as to on the scale of it, but they're doing an amazing job bringing in merchants and partners who they can structure their payments from a credit perspective, right? So we are partnering with them. And the list is quite long. I mean, even with content creators, for example, you can call them MSMEs or SMEs, I mean, depending on how you look at their business. But content creators, Wowzy, for example, a very well-known name, we're working with them in order to come up with social media content creation-based roles and jobs, right? So I think depending on the fintech's focus, what we do is we collaborate closely together, bring in our partners, globally or locally, and then make sure that the product or the solution that they're trying to bring to the market to solve for a particular pain point sees the light of day and then sees scaling, ideally. Now, what that brings to the MSMEs, further beyond their core offering is, for example, MSMEs would like just low-cost payment acceptance, right? The options, the diversity, right? That is enabled through, let's say, a QR. It could be enabled through tap on phone. As smartphones increase, I think tap on phone definitely will be there. There's talk about, obviously, when will Apple Pay come here and other things will, big platforms like that. Big tech is coming to Africa for sure. And so I think enabling and getting the market ready to embrace these new technologies, you have to have an open mind, and you need to obviously see whether it makes sense for you or not. Our job is to hear your pain point, construct a solution, bring it to you, and then you decide.
Speaking about getting the market ready, Gituku, help me respond to this question, because someone here is asking, how do we address the issue of fintech solutions which are predominantly designed for smartphone use, where majority are on feature phones? Can be a tricky one.
Well, yeah, the example I keep giving is one of Uber. They came to this market many years ago. It's now over a decade, actually. And they came in, with a model that was that they knew about from other markets, which was a smartphone. And had they done an analysis to figure out how many smartphones do we have in this country, and they probably would not be here today.
Yeah.
And they also, came with a card-only model. They eventually went into into cash. So yeah, I mean, there'll always be that question about, will I be able to scale with smartphones? Can I only solve for smartphone users, or do I also have to make sure that I solve for feature phone users? The growth of smartphones is on the rise, right? Costs are coming down. Obviously, then it's not just the cost coming down. Is I have a smartphone, yes, but what are all the things I can do on it? So I think we're still in a situation where you should solve for both smartphone and feature phone users, but we also have folks on smartphones who are still using feature phone capabilities on them, right? So, for example, when it comes to bank transactions, there's still a huge number of consumers who still transact on USSD channels, right? If you look at the M-Pesa stats as well, majority of the transactions that are done are still being done on the same toolkits and not the app. However, if you look at the app utilization, it's up significantly higher in terms of utilization per user per month than it is on same toolkit. So there's a huge shift towards adoption of technology that includes smartphones as well. And I think when we find ourselves in this part of the world in a situation where you have to solve for both, right? Just this morning with my team, we spent a huge lot of time trying to crack something around how we take something new to market, right? And we asked ourselves, but how are they doing it in Asia, right? And we said, look, that's a market where they adopted QR codes, right? And they don't have that challenge, therefore,
yes.
Right? But we went in with use of things that manual entry, for example, that requires you to type something in to be able to effect a transaction and not to use images. So yeah, it's a challenge that we face definitely as players in the payment space, right? Having to accommodate both smartphone, feature phone environments, and not just the fact that it's a feature phone, but you've also got users who are on smartphones but are still transacting as if it were a feature phone. Yeah, so it's the job that we signed up for. It's something we're going to find a way to crack.
It's the reason why they're paid.
Yes.
That point by Gituku takes us to a very quick break. We shall come back with the last leg of our conversation. And when we come back, we'll be discussing digitized payments, MSMEs, and cross-border landscape and opportunities. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the last leg of the conversation on the Nation Leadership Forum, digitized payments and micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. In part one, we're basically discussing shocks and the macros. Part two, we discuss matters around costs, uptake, and what this means for the MSME landscape in the country. And also the sticky issue around digitized payments and formalization. In the last leg, we want to talk about digitized payments, MSMEs, and cross-border payments and what this means for them. Let me start very quickly with Harrison on the extreme end. For SMEs who are scouting for opportunities beyond our borders, they always cite payments as a key challenge. Do you see it as such, and how does KEPSA support them when it comes to that area?
Yes, it's one of the big challenge because most of them, one of the issues that they have is issues of compliance and efficiency in terms of getting their funds. You will find it takes more days to get your fund after you sell than when you are doing a local transactions. So in terms of one of the things that we are doing is just to ensure that we have adoption of Pan-African infrastructure payment solutions, which can be scaled to ensure that transaction cost goes down, but also efficiency in terms of ensuring that we can, once a payment is done probably from West Africa, it can reach here like just instant, just like the way they're transacting here in Kenya, like an M-Pesa. So how do we ensure, those are some of the discussion, even as we talk about implementation of the Africa AFCTA, how do we ensure that that is part of the enablers, because you cannot, we cannot be saying FCTA is a solution where some of the challenges, like the other challenges, the payment is one of the challenges, the logistics is another challenge. How do you ensure that once you get customers, you are able to ensure that the commodity reach to the customer at the fastest time and the most efficient time.
Yes.
So ensuring those discussions is part of, in terms of harmonization of standards, especially for closer border trade, even as we implement the different agreements that we have. So that's a key area that we are working on with the different partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking about Pan-African infrastructure, Gituku, we've heard about the Pan-African payment system, and the whole idea is why can't we transact in our own currencies as opposed to using the USD? What do you think about this, and how do you think it will pan out and impact especially MSMEs?
First of all, I think when you talk about PAPs, you've got to also just look at the history of Africa and trade across Africa.
Yeah.
Why is it that it's a challenge to transact within Africa? Right? So it goes back to going back in history during before Africa was colonized, right? When there were no borders, right? We all there was a lot of trade happening right across the continent, and people would move around freely. What happens when we go through when Africa gets split up? Right, we find ourselves in a situation where now there's trade happening between each African country and the country, European country, for example. And language also becomes a challenge, right? If you look at, for example, the West Africa, you'll find that you find two English-speaking countries, French, English.
Yes.
Yeah. Look at East Africa as well. Right? You've got English and French-speaking countries next to each other, and that already poses a challenge from a language perspective, from laws and regulations that are in place, the law of the land that you use, and so those already are barriers to trade that just do not work in Africa's interest. And I think every African, right, should be concerned about that and should be seeking to do something about it. And I'm very happy to be able to be in the payment space to try and contribute to that. And perhaps, yes, just for the purposes of benefit of all viewers, seeks to solve is ability for transactions within, yes, your domestic currency. For now, settlement will still happen through hard currency, but that will happen in the background. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about conversion to a hard currency, right? And you can, for ease of communication, for ease of computation of what is you need to pay, you can work. It makes your life a lot easier. So I, believe that perhaps is definitely something that we should all embrace, and very happy that we at IPSL have done exactly that. We have agreed to work with PAPs to enable transactions both in and out of Kenya. Through PAPs. I think anything that just, again, removes barriers, right, to trade across continents. We already are faced with language barrier, which is not very helpful. We are faced with legal barriers because of different laws from a jurisdiction perspective. And if we can make it easier on the payments front and build digital payments infrastructure that can be able to cut across borders, that can remove any form of friction, then that's going to be very, very highly welcome. And yes, so we look forward to working with Pesalink participants to enable the movement of funds, not just with PUBs, but with even other cross-border international money operators. Today we do power international money operators that, for example, are sending money into the country. They really use the Pesalink ecosystem as a last mile for delivery of funds. We'd also be quite happy to do the same thing for outbound, where we can also then offer services at a whole-scale level, so that entities that want to, anyone who has a store of value, be it a SACCO, be it even a fintech, be it a bank that wants to send money out, we can be that pipe that provides a wholesale service and therefore, again, brings the cost of payments down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sharia, I'm sure you're doing quite a bit in terms of this area.
So look, our goal globally is that we've got to bring 1 billion people by 2025 into the financial inclusion fold. 50 million of that is SMEs. Now, SMEs have quite a variety or diverse cross-border needs. So what we want to ensure is that, for example, our cross-border services, our MasterCard Send services, these are all services options which enable cross-border transfers and payments in different sizes. For example, cross-border services, perfect fit for SMEs, because you can do instantly 200 countries. I understand we've discussed around Africa. I mean, frankly, we've got the connectivity all across Africa as well. And we can enable to do that at 40% a lower cost than what is being paid today. So that solution itself is catching like wildfire in terms of when we look at our business. And there's a reason, because there's a demand, there's a need, right? We started 70 years back as a switch, creating a network, spreading it all over the world. And we have reached a point that, yes, localization, regional localization, that's all right down our alley. And we would love to use our tech stack and bring white labeling of some of these solutions that we add. Because network management is like Gituku knows, I mean, it's not an easy thing, right? There's a lot of facets on how do you keep it safe, sustainable, secure, trustworthy. The UX has to be spot on. There's so many angles around it. We talked about the complexity around just what currencies you're going to settle down on if regional, let's say, infrastructure is set up. So we have all of that, and we would love to be contributing in this space and creating whatever next solution. Maybe there's no need. Maybe we can take the current network integration we have and maybe plug it across Africa, and that should solve the thing. But it's the objective which we have to converge on. What is the objective? It has to be instant, it has to be pain-free, no bureaucracy, simple, transparent rules, trustworthy, and secure. And that's what we have made our name for over the many years.
I see. Quite some intervention you're talking about there. So let me ask you, gentlemen, as we get to the close of our conversation, what, by way of policy intervention, do you think is the priority that should be addressed when it comes to facilitating MSMEs and cross-border payments? Harrison.
I think one of key one is looking at harmonizing the different cross-border payment systems to ensure that the payment is seamless, because currently they are very different in regulations, the fragmentation in terms of regulations. So how do we ensure that in terms of as we implement the agreements and that as we also negotiate for agreements, how do we ensure that there are payment infrastructure that can be shared among the different stakeholders so that we ensure this competition. Competition will ensure this innovation and reduces the cost for the different, especially the fintech. Because if you look at why the high cost of the transaction, every fintech looks at building their own infrastructure, which becomes very costly. So in terms of now implementation, that ensure that all the costs, they have to recover the cost. that they have invested. So if we ensure that they are shared services or shared infrastructure, then those are some of the things that can reduce beyond the policies, beyond there are different things that we need to encourage even the different players in the ecosystem to ensure they are working together so that the costs can go down, because one of the barrier of many businesses not using the digital solutions is the cost. So how do we ensure that the cost goes down? By ensuring that beyond the policies, there is also public-private partnerships investments, which will ensure that some of the high costs, especially for the rural areas, are co-invested, and that reduces the costs overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier on, I think definitely costs. There's a question around cost that needs to be addressed, right? That's for me, it's definite. And how do we do that? So first of all, we've got to appreciate that technology comes at a tidy sum. Right? It's not cheap, and we then therefore need to find ways of addressing the unit economics. And there is a role for both private sector and public sector to play in this. And what we, like I've mentioned earlier on, we need to address is the issue of, for example, closed-loop environments. We need to be able to share technology assets a lot more. So, therefore, you reduce the need for a duplication of efforts when it comes to digital assets that are out there, right? And one of the things that today we are doing as an organization is adopting digital public infrastructure principles. Now, what's digital public infrastructure? Digital public infrastructure was finally agreed upon at the last G20 summit, when it was with India held the presidency. And the principles of those are around the technology, ecosystem, and governance. And on technology, what the principles state is that you should have scalable and interoperable technology, right? On the ecosystem side, it's got to be collaborative. Right? It's got to be inclusive, right? Now, how do you do that then and also balance private sector interests, right? How do you do those things and balance private sector interests? And then that's where private sector is also called upon to think through in every intervention and everything that we are doing, right? Where is the public good in what we're doing, right? And how are we ensuring that it's collaborative, it's inclusive, right? Because all that then will also going to drive affordability, right? And from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, again, I mentioned this country, for example, has today a national payments and strategy and vision document. That's a position that has been issued by our regulator, and we need to work together. The regulator needs to play their bit, private sector plays their bit. But yeah, there's definitely work for both of us, all of us, to do something about bringing costs down, and that also goes for cross-border as well, right? We've got to reduce barriers and again reduce the number of hops or the number of intermediaries that we have to go through today to be able to effect a payment.
Okay, Sharia, we have 4 minutes to go. Let me give you the opportunity to give us the closing submission.
Oh, thank you. Look, I think this has been an amazing discussion. Firstly, we are headed towards the age of artificial intelligence data. You cannot have the backbone of the country, which is the MSMEs, left out. Yeah. You just cannot. We have to move forward into this age. Whether we like the age or not, that's the secondary question. It's coming. It's here, right? You're already feeling it, right? Now, how as responsible players and stakeholders, we're going to all come together and make sure that that data it has their structure, the security, privacy is managed, all of that. But at the same time, there is the opportunity that becomes visible to the SMEs. Yeah. That should I make myself visible to the world has enough, there's enough good forces out there to help me grow my business and make me, a beneficiary of digital transformation or digitalization. Yeah. There's always fears, and we have fears, but nothing stops our future. The fears, they cannot, the future will not be stopped. The future is here, right? So you have to look at how do you show yourself. You can always control what you want to show, but you have to show yourself in a way where whatever your business model is, whether it's in the agri sector. I've got a team of 80 plus team members in Nairobi. Day in, day out, with the KPI that we have to get 1 billion people globally, but then 50 million SMEs. We have a big body of SMEs in Africa, a big body of SMEs here in Kenya. And therefore, the objective day in, day out is, okay, let's say agri sector, how do we solve for them? Let's say supply chain for big corporates, how do we enable them to do easily business with in terms of that supply chain management? Trade, cross-border, how do we get that sorted? So there's no one solution fits all, and we have to appreciate that fact. You know, but we also need the public-private sector to come together and create a conducive and not a threatening environment, a conducive environment where the SME sees that, yes, if I spend my time here and I look at thought leaders and people who have seen this work, that I can trust and try this model out and see if I can, you know, ultimately succeed in whatever my objectives are and ambitions are. So I think that's where I think a national dialogue and, of course, awareness, education, all of that comes with it. We all have to play our part. Okay. And we're definitely not hitting our KPI if we don't go on that fast. So we need help, and we'd love to work with KEPSA and IPSL and a host of other like-minded partners to get those solutions out and make an impact for the SMEs.
Sharia, Gituku, and Harrison, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation. It's been a delight having your insights on the subject of the digitized payments and micro, small, and medium-sized payments. That takes us to the close of this edition of the Nation Leadership Forum. Remember, this conversation continues online. Please continue sharing your thoughts, your feedback. We shall be bringing in the thoughts from our expert panel here to see how we take this agenda forward. So stay tuned. News is up next.